Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe, and today we're going to be talking about weighing cost. And also today, this is going to have some explicit content in it because I am feeling some kind of way. In a way, it's just a matter of me being pissed. And maybe that's my brand. Maybe I'm really actually just one walking ulcer when it comes to usability. But man, oh man, today has got me in a twist. So, which is actually particularly fitting because Dan Maul actually posted a part of his newsletter today which was talking about the cost of consistency. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit about today. We're going to be talking about cost, of course. But there's something very important about that cost that I want to also address in today's episode. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the post that he posted, Dan, that's talking about the cost of consistency. And he's explaining in this post a little bit about that there is a cost that it comes to consistency, right? Effectively, every time you say no, there's like a small battle, right? Because consistency can feel like someone else's rules, right? And that's definitely the case, right? A system is trying to unify or agree upon all of the things that people want on top of all of the user expectations to present this unified, codified set of resources. That is a collaboration, and it's more so a compromise, right? Because it's entirely possible that you have opinions as a designer that are in conflict with that consistency, with those agreements, with those rules, right? And that's where the battles come in, right? Well, I want this thing to be purple over here. And well, the system doesn't allow purple. Well, I want it to be purple. Okay, why? Well, I want it to be that way. And that's awful from a usability standpoint, right? From a user advocacy standpoint, more specifically, right? That's egocentric design. There's no reason why it should be purple other than you feel like it should be purple, right? There's nothing conveying purpleness in this particular case, right? It's some expression. And admittedly, all the work that I've done with Ms. Unmode is attempting to provide expressions on top of a system. So there's avenues in ways of being able to get that. It's not necessarily you just plopping purple onto this thing that you want to, right? There's a reason why that system exists. It's for the consistency, and Dan Maul continues on this post talking about why the consistency works because of the user benefit, the team benefit, and the product benefit, right? In certain amounts of detail in that post. There's benefits to many of the people in the ecosystem that this product is talking about. So to keep consistency is valuable, right? But there's a cost to keep that consistency that he's explaining in here. Now, what I also want to get into, of course, is, and this is very specific to what's gotten me such a twist, is designers that are out there that want to put polish on turds, or even just want to put polish on things that don't even need polish, right? I'm under this impression that we want to justify our own existence, and designers are fearing that there's nothing for them to do. So they rehash a color palette, right? Or they look into how could we tweak this new thing in this way? Or let's make a new rule for this that's going to be really annoying for developers to actually implement, right? Because here's the secret, folks. Developers can actually do anything, all right? But what we're weighing it against is the cost. How much time it's going to take to do this, research it, do it the right way, right? And on top of which, the next time that some designer comes in here and says, oh, actually, wait, we want to change that again, it's 6 months. Well, did all that time just go out the window, right? Like, why did we do this 6 months ago when now we're going to do this 6 months later? Why didn't you do it right the first time, right? This is the move fast and break things mentality that we do see in design constantly, right? It's wrapped up the agile iterative process. It's all bullshit, okay? If we spent more time perfecting what our experiences are meant to do, right? Reaching that North Star of what the perfect experience is meant to be in a consistent way, we wouldn't have this rolling responsibility that fleets every once in a while that says we need to change this thing. Case in point, I'm going to show some images on here. If you're listening on an audio podcast, I'm sorry, I'm going to do my best to describe what I'm showing in here, but I'll be showing the tooltip out of Carbon's design system, specifically the Style tab. And the Style tab has a couple of images on here that show the tooltip. And admittedly, when I first saw this, I didn't look at the Style tab because I just look at the code because, of course, the code is the source of truth, right? But in the Style tab, it's trying to describe some of the specifications for this tooltip. And if you look closely in the image that is effectively in the after the interactive state color area, it's less about the colors that I'm going to be talking about. It's actually more about the arrow that's attached to the tooltip. If you look at the examples at the top, there's two of them. Both of them say open and then hover and open and focus. And then on the bottom, you also have this open definition tooltip, click, hover, focus, etc. The important thing I want you to really zoom in on is the size of the caret. Now, if you look closely, the size of the caret for this one on top and the size of the caret for this one on the bottom are different. I'm going to say it again. The size of the caret for this one on top and the size of the caret for this one on the bottom are different. It's the same component, but the size of the arrow is different. Now, the next question, of course, is going to be, well, hold on a second. Why is the caret different, right? And the reality of it is, as I'm going through the specifications, and I'm scrolling through here, okay, the specifications in here, there's one entry for caret. It says pop over caret, and it has a conversion for pixels and rem, 6 pixels or 0.375 rem, and there's no token for this either, according to the spec. But it's not measured in the anatomy here. It's just, you could see that they're smaller, and in fact, the reality of it here is that there's actually a difference in the specification between single line and multi-line, and that's really what they're trying to outline here, is that the specification is separating the concept for the tooltip of a single line tooltip versus a multi-line tooltip, okay? So that's what's going on in this image. We could now understand what the, we'll call it designer's intention was, such that if there's only a single line, the caret is this size. If there's multiple lines, then this caret is a totally separate size, okay? That's what the designer's intention was. If you look at the code, actually, let's go to the code that's over here. We'll go to the React code. If we look at the code for Tooltip, that's not what happens. So what I'm showing right now is the storybook for the React code base for the Tooltip. And when I hover over this, there's an arrow off of this tooltip, and the tooltip has 3 lines. So that means that that arrow should be a different size than one that has only a single line of text. So this is going to be a little hard to show in between storybooks here, but effectively, the caret in the code does not change. And I looked into the source code. In fact, they're using floating UI, which is the same kind of library that I've used in the past to make the floating happen, as well as the caret, or I should say the arrow. And in the code, does not change. Does not change. And there's no mechanism, no internal logic or anything like that that causes it to change. There doesn't seem to be a prop that says, hey, arrow size, and we're going to update the arrow size for some reason. None of that, okay? Now, this raises the question, oh my God, did the Carbon design system developers just decide to, you know, not do that? Did they overlook that? What's the story there? I don't know the actual story, but I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to make an assumption that the developers took one look at that and said, why the fuck would you do that? Right? Because the amount of time, cost, resources, documentation to get people to do that, in one case, in terms of saying, oh, okay, well, if you supply one line of text, you need to supply the correct arrow size. Nobody's going to do that. Right? Nobody's going to do that. And if they do, they're wasting their time. On the other hand, could you potentially do this in code such that you identify if there's a single line of text in there versus multiple lines and then updating the size of the arrow? Yeah, you could. But the amount of engineering effort that it takes for, again, an engineer's salary to update that where you could just put an arrow and call it a day, that's a lot of cost. It's a lot of money to do that. And the reality of it is when we're talking about a tooltip, at best, the tooltip is visible on the particular page for seconds. At worst, is an accessibility minefield, right? The better way to be handling this kind of content in the page is to literally put it in the page, right? To hide content from users is just overall a bad practice when it comes to usability. Why not just put it where it belongs, right? If this thing that you're making is confusing, then it means that you need to update the UX in here to make it better and less confusing, right? Don't just polish this turd of a UX by putting effectively a more bigger turd on this thing in the form of a tooltip, right? Just say, oh, that'll improve things. It's not. I'm gonna let you know right now, it's not, right? You as a designer, if you're doing this, you're being lazy, right? In my system, the one that I use as my playground, I didn't even consider trying to put a tooltip in there. Why? Because the content should be in the page. And I don't want to have a avenue for someone to try to choose the tooltip. If someone was going to try to choose the tooltip, they should know that that's probably a bad move, okay? And admittedly, I feel like if you have a stronger opinion in the opposite direction about some reason why tooltips need to exist, leave it in the comments below. I will absolutely love to argue in favor of not having a single tooltip anywhere in your application, right? It's just bad practice. But here we are, right? Even with that understanding, right, and that story about how poor tooltips are, they still exist. They're still there. So we need to support them, right? Happens all the time in design systems, right? This is the cost that Dan was originally talking about, right? Where if we don't meet those needs of those users, then it seems like a larger cost because now, this person is spending time making this tooltip in an isolation because the design system doesn't have it, right? So if we're gonna go ahead and have it in the design system, why not have it consistent, right? And that's the reality of it is that does it actually matter if the tooltip size changes between one line and multi-line? The answer is no, absolutely not. Does not matter, not in one little bit. And I challenge you to make a case in dollars and cents about why it matters. I challenge you, right? You have to weigh out the amount of effort it's going to take to do a particular direction versus the cost in which it's going to take, right? And not the cost it's going to take, but the cost that you're saving, right? The revenue that's coming in based off this application, right? You're weighing these two things out. And the reality of it is that playing around with the size of the arrow attached to a tooltip, waste of time, period. Speaking of waste of time, I also want to show this one last image that I remember seeing a few, I'll say years ago, that was, I think, based off of just a joke, but apparently this is something that Shopify potentially does. I'm not sure entirely how accurate that is, but this is an image of a Google Calendar meeting event, and there is a item at the bottom that explains or estimates what the total meeting cost for this meeting would be, right? For these individuals that are inside of this meeting, there are 7 of them. I'm assuming the expectation here is that the system would kind of average what, based on their role is in the company, what the salary probably is. Then, of course, like split that up into hourly bases and then add them together to determine the amount that's on here, which in this particular example for these 7 people costs $2,000 to have an hour-long meeting. So this is the kind of thing that I'm trying to kind of get to when it comes to the work that we do in design systems, right? Or the work we do, in just product design, right? We have to show value in what we're doing. That's what we should be doing. And I don't think that screwing around with little tweaks and little parts of polish on an otherwise poor experience is the way to be using our time, our resources, and etc. But you know what? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to play nice, even though I wasn't really playing so nice today. But again, I'm just heated. I am just so angry at the state of usability out there, and it's really making me upset. So I wanted to vent out here to you. Thanks for listening to the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and find an adult beverage somewhere. I'll see you next time, hopefully with something a little bit more lighthearted. By the way, I did publish that blog post that I mentioned in the last episode yesterday. It is on the blog about word wrapping and things like that, very nerdy stuff. So go check that out if you like. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Again, take it easy out there. I need to take my own advice. Bye.